June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway. 6 brand-new American airplanes, flying into combat for the very first time, descend toward the Japanese fleet. They are Torpedo Squadron 8, detached from the carrier Hornet, flying from Midway Island itself. Their aircraft is the TBF-1, the Avenger. It is a massacre. The Japanese Zeros, the fastest fighters in the world, fall on them like a cloud of bees. The new American planes are heavy, clumsy, and agonizingly slow. One by one, they are ripped to pieces. One explodes, another cartwheels into the sea, a third, trailing smoke, slams into the water. Of the 6 planes that went out, 5 were shot down. The 6th, piloted by Ensign Bert Ernest, barely limps back to Midway. His gunner is dead, his hydraulic systems are shot out. The plane is a flying wreck with over 100 bullet holes. The results of their first combat mission: 100% casualties, 0 hits on the enemy. It was a disaster. Pilots in the fleet, seeing this new giant awkward machine, had a name for it. They called it the Flying Coffin. They laughed at it. It was too big, too fat, too slow. It was a failure, dead on arrival. So how did this flying coffin, this 100% failure at Midway, go on to become the single most effective Navy-killing machine in the Pacific? How did this joke of an airplane end up hunting and sinking the 2 largest, most powerful battleships ever built by mankind?
To understand the Avenger, you first have to understand what it was built to replace. This is the TBD Devastator, the U.S. Navy's main torpedo bomber in 1941. It was, even then, a flying antique. It was slow, underarmed, and when it dropped its torpedo, it had to fly straight and level, a sitting duck. At the very same Battle of Midway, 41 Devastators were launched from the American carriers. 37 were shot down. 0 hits. The Navy knew this was coming. Back in 1939, they had asked for a replacement. The contract went to the Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation. Grumman had a philosophy, a reputation. They didn't build elegant sports cars. They built trucks. They were known as the Grumman Iron Works, and the plane they designed, the XTBF-1, was pure Grumman. It was enormous. It was the largest single-engine aircraft of the entire war. It was a machine of firsts. It was the first American torpedo bomber to carry its torpedo in an internal bomb bay, like a strategic bomber. It was the first single-engine plane in the world to feature a power-operated 360-degree dorsal turret, giving it a sting in its tail. And it had a new, revolutionary, complex hydraulic wing-folding mechanism, the stow wing, so it could fit on crowded carrier decks. But when pilots first got their hands on it, they hated it. Fighter pilots used to the nimble F-4F Wildcat thought it was a joke. It was heavy, it was unresponsive, it flew, in their words, like a truck. It was so big and awkward on a flight deck, it earned a nickname that stuck for the rest of its life: the Turkey. It was a fat, waddling, ungraceful bird, and after its disastrous debut at Midway, the Turkey and the Flying Coffin nicknames seemed permanent. They were laughing at it, but they had all missed the point. Grumman hadn't built a fighter. They had built a survivor. Those weaknesses, its size, its weight, its complexity, were the very things that would make it a legend.
Let's go back to the Midway disaster. Why did those 6 Avengers fail? Because they were sent on a suicide mission. They attacked the entire Japanese fleet with no fighter escort. No aircraft in the world, not a Spitfire, not a Zero, not anything, could have survived that. The fact that one of them made it back at all wasn't a failure. It was a miracle. Ensign Ernest's plane had been hit by cannon shells. Its hydraulic lines were severed. Its landing gear wouldn't come down. The turret was shattered. And still, it flew. For almost an hour, it flew. That was the Grumman Iron Works. Unlike Japanese aircraft, which were built light and fast by sacrificing everything, armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, pilot protection, the Avenger was a flying vault. It had armor plating for the pilot. It had armor for the turret gunner. Its fuel tanks were self-sealing, meaning they could take bullet hits and not explode. Its rugged 1900 horsepower Wright R2600 engine could absorb damage that would have vaporized a liquid-cooled engine. The stories became legendary. Avengers would return to their carriers with hundreds of bullet holes, with entire control surfaces shot away. One Avenger, during the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, was pounced on by Zeros. Its radio man was killed, its gunner wounded. The pilot, wounded himself, flew for 2 hours, blinded by oil, and landed back on the Enterprise. The ground crew counted over 200 holes. This was the plane's secret. It didn't just deliver punishment, it could take it. And then there was the story of a young pilot from Torpedo Squadron 51. His name was George H.W. Bush, the future President of the United States. In 1944, on a strike against Chichijima, his Avenger was hit by heavy anti-aircraft fire. The plane caught fire, the cockpit filling with smoke. But the turkey kept flying. It held together long enough for Bush to complete his bombing run, hit his target, and fly out over the water far enough to bail out and be rescued. The flying Coffin was actually a life raft. It was a machine built to bring its crew home. And now, this tough, reliable flying tank was about to be paired with a new partner that would unleash its full potential. This is the F-6F Hellcat, another Grumman Iron Works product. By 1943, the Hellcat had arrived, and it owned the sky. It was built specifically to hunt and kill the Japanese Zero, and the Hellcat changed everything for the Avenger. No longer a sitting duck, the turkey was now free to do its job, protected by a swarm of angry blue fighters. The chickens, as the fighter pilots were called, would clear the sky, and the turkeys would go to work on the ships below. The results were terrifying. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, what pilots called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, the Hellcats annihilated the Japanese air cover. The Avengers, now unopposed, descended on the Japanese fleet. They spotted the carrier Hio and planted torpedo after torpedo into its side. It sank in hours. But the Avenger's ultimate test was coming, its final exam. October 1944, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval battle in human history. The Japanese, in a desperate final gamble, send their super battleships, the largest, most powerful battleships ever built, into the fight. The Musashi, 72,000 tons, armed with 18-inch guns that could hurl a shell the weight of a car over 26 miles. On October 24th, waves of American aircraft, Hellcats, Helldivers, and Avengers swarmed the Musashi. The Avengers, those slow, clumsy planes, came in low, dodging a storm of anti-aircraft fire, and dropped their fish. The Musashi was hit by an estimated 19 torpedoes, many of them from Avengers. It sank in hours. 6 months later, its sister ship, the Yamato, made its final suicidal run. Again, the call went out,
And again, the Avengers answered. They swarmed the Yamato, this unsinkable leviathan, like a pack of wolves. They ignored the curtain of steel thrown up at them. They planted torpedo after torpedo, 10, 12, 13 into its hull. At 2:23 p.m., April 7th, 1945, the Yamato exploded. The flying coffin, the turkey, the failure of Midway, had just helped kill the two most powerful warships on the planet. The laughter had stopped.
But here is the most incredible part of the Avengers' story. While it was systematically decimating the Japanese fleet in the Pacific, it was simultaneously fighting and winning another war on the other side of the world, the Battle of the Atlantic. By 1943, German U-boats were strangling Great Britain. The wolf packs were sinking hundreds of Allied supply ships, threatening to starve the island nation into surrender. The U-boats were invisible, deadly, and winning. The Allies responded with a new weapon, the Jeep carrier. Small, cheap, mass-produced aircraft carriers. And what plane did they put on them? The only one perfect for the job, the Avenger. Why? Because the turkey had three things a U-boat hunter needed more than anything else. First, endurance. It could loiter over the cold Atlantic for hours, scanning the waves. Second, payload. Its massive internal bomb bay could carry depth charges, rockets, and the new top-secret acoustic homing torpedo, the Fido, which could listen for a submarine. Third, technology. It was big enough to be crammed full of the latest air-to-surface radar. A U-boat would surface at night thinking it was safe, and suddenly a turkey would fall out of the darkness, guided by radar, firing rockets and dropping depth charges. The U-boat crews were terrified. They had nowhere to hide. The hunter-killer groups, built around the Avenger, broke the back of the U-boat fleet. This flying coffin wasn't just winning one war, it was winning two. Let's go back one last time to June 4th, 1942, to those 6 planes and the 5 that didn't come back. They weren't a failure, they were a sacrifice. They were the tragic, fiery birth of a legend. The TBF Avenger was never the fastest plane, it was never the most beautiful, but it was the workhorse. It was the plane that could take a beating and come home. It was the plane that could carry any weapon, fly in any weather, and hunt any target, from a U-boat to a super battleship. Pilots laughed at it. They called it the turkey. They called it the flying coffin. But by 1945, from the cold floor of the North Atlantic to the deep trenches of the Pacific, the entire world knew its real name. The name it had earned. The Avenger.